Let's talk about named procedures. Remember that a procedure is a chunk or a block of code that is stored by name into a database and is executed using 0 or more parameters. Those parameters can be passed in or out or by reference, by a pointer. A procedure is not declarative. It is not an expression, so unlike a function, it does not return a value, does not return a result as a return statement, cannot be embedded. Here is the syntax, or the format of the command structure of the create procedure command. Basically, we say create a procedure with parameters, and then a begin-end section that encapsulates commands, including potentially exception traps. Here we're looking at the or replace part of the syntax, which implies that if the procedure does not exist, it is created, and if it does exist, it is overwritten, also implying that there is no alter procedure syntax command. Well, there is, but it doesn't include reinstantiating the code, which we'll see shortly. And here we can see that we have the parameter definitions as a comma delimited list. When we look at the square bracketed section after the data type, as many programmers will understand, that this syntax implies that you can have essentially more than one parameter in a comma delimited list. Square brackets means you don't have to put anything in it, but you can put one or more. And the parameters can be passed in by value. You pass in a value, or you pass out a value that is changed inside the procedure. Note that a passed in value cannot be changed in the procedure. And an in-out value is essentially allowing you to pass in and out a reference. You can pass it in, you can change it in the procedure and pass it out as well. And then we have data types, which in PL/SQL, I mentioned they're more general. It means that SQL data types are more refined, more specific within table structures. In PL/SQL, they get a little bit more generalized. In other words, you don't have as many different formats or names for things. You don't have necessarily integers, large integers, small integers, different types of dates and timestamps. So it gets a little bit simpler, which is useful in programming terms. Don't want too much complexity. Here's the alter procedure command, and the only thing you can do with the alter procedure is to recompile a procedure. And obviously, drop procedure will drop the procedure and remove it from the database. What I'd like to do now is to once again go into the Oracle documentation, because in these training courses, I like to go through documentation to show people how to find things, as opposed to actually just showing you what to do. I like to show you how to do some of it yourself as well. Now, there's a couple of options here, so we'll go through them. Again, database, I can type create procedure. Well, it doesn't actually need me to click search. And it doesn't actually tell me which manual it's in, which is the interesting part. I can click this, and what will I get? Okay, this is interesting. I'm fairly sure this is in the PL/SQL language. Create procedure data PL/SQL language reference, and it's within SQL statements for stored PL/SQL units. Okay, this is interesting because if I go to the main set of documents, I go to database, we've been through this before, I click all documentation, I go down a page, I click all database books. I'm not going to go to the PL/SQL manual, as is this one here, the language reference. I'm going to go to the SQL manual, because technically the SQL language reference guide has lots of the syntax diagrams, which in Oracle, I love them. They're great. I find them very easy to follow. Here's a list of the commands. Create procedure is technically in Oracle, it's an Oracle SQL command, but it does allow you to form PL/SQL code. So if I scroll down here, I will find the syntax page inside the SQL reference manual for the create procedure command. And here are the lovely syntax diagrams I was talking about. To me, I can follow these things through for each option. This is a very simple one. But from past experience, looking through all sorts of other interesting things inside Oracle, I can basically follow my way through an entire create table command through these syntax diagrams. And once you get used to them, I'm quite sure that you'll probably be able to do the same thing. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but they're extremely useful. I can also go back. I can go back to the beginning of the SQL reference manual, and I can search for alter procedure, L to S, alter library, alter system. And I should find alter procedure. And here is another syntax diagram for alter procedure. Don't worry about all those details. It's not really important at the moment. And obviously we're going to find drop procedure somewhere as well. Drop sequence, create type to drop rollback. That's where we're going to find drop procedure. And drop procedure. As you can see for later on, drop package, and I seem to recall drop function, and we'll probably find drop trigger in here somewhere as well. Well, that would be on the next page. Drop trigger would be on the next one. So that's where we find this stuff. We can find it in the PL/SQL manual as well, but it's a little more obtuse in that particular manual. So back to an example. So here is a named procedure that essentially makes changes to one of the tables in my database. And as soon as I create or replace it, give it a name, it essentially stores it in the database, compiles it. I can compile it again to make sure. And then I can go to the point of actually running a piece of code that joins it all together and shows me what I changed. Pretty basic. Here, I'm actually going to execute this procedure. As in, the procedure is called price multiplier. And down here, I will execute the price multiplier procedure that says, it essentially says update a table, set something in the table where based on various restrictions, commits, and it outputs and it says what I changed. So I could go down to here and say execute price multiplier. Price multiplier changed from blah, 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 blah. As you can see, I'm actually changing things in my database using that stored procedure. It's pretty simple. It's not complicated. And that is the basics of named procedures in Oracle.